himself is within them walls. I summon the killer, and hang you will.
My dad is the authority on Texas history.
Returned. Who? Who returned, Dad? Who the hell are these? I don't know.
Why are they doing this?
Gun. It's the gun. It shall serve as a reminder to future generations of the wicked soul we dispatched to hell this very night.
I'm tired of messing with these guys.
Die. Die, son of a bitch. You guys always winning.
You're all dead. You're all dead!
Real excited to talk to you both. This is I'm glad to be talking to people who understand me finally. You know, a little bit more of my time period. You know, I'm talking to all these young kids these days, and it's really different for me in that experience. When I reference something from like the '80s, they all look at me funny and cross-eyed, and it's kind of funny. So I'm kind of glad to be talking about something that I don't remember, but I can relate to very, very fondly.
Well, and you know, it's interesting. In those days, everybody can make a feature film today because of all the digital technology. But in those days, you had to shoot on film. You had to actually spend some money. You had to make something, and you had to compete with bigger movies on those blockbuster shelves. And guys like Tom, just they really set the business on fire in those days. But it was not for the faint-hearted, right, Tom?
Yeah.
Yes, I wish I had what the tools they have today. I'd have been making all kinds of movies.
Yeah, it's interesting, right? I mean, it's a bygone era that I miss tremendously personally. And to look back on this as an accomplishment in itself, because there's not a single star in this movie. This is a movie where it has some 80s flavor to it, but it's really different even for its time period then, in that it's merging almost two genres together. So I'm kind of curious, when you guys were making this, I mean, how did you do it?
Well, I had worked on this other film called Bits and Pieces, and I was the gaffer on it. Even though I think for some reason on IMDb I'm credited as the DP, but I was the gaffer. Larry Grice was the DP. Anyway, so after doing it, I had just moved to LA, and I called up my friend Alan Stewart, and I said, you know, we've always talked about making a movie, and I just worked on one, and it's not that hard. I think we can do it. You know, and so we put a little bit of money together, and then we were able to raise, I think it was the initial amount was $30,000. And Alan owned a CP16 and some gear, and I owned some gear. I actually made a bunch of all the grip gear practically about 2 months before we started shooting. And that's how we did it. We just went for it. We hired a bunch of Baylor students. You know, nobody was paid anything.
Mm-hmm.
I don't even think the actors were paid. Alan knew a couple actors out of Dallas and a casting person. And we just put it together, and it was a blast. You know, it was like, you know, it was a bunch of kids basically, and we were having a great time doing it. It was so much fun. It's one of the best experiences I ever had.
Brethren, there is evil amongst us. The devil himself is within them walls. Are we we going to risk letting him loose again upon his... No! Frank Clements is a killer, a murderer of children. Retribution is at hand. The Lord says, drive the beast from your midst. Destroy him. Send him back to the hell that spawned him.
So, finally have your way with it, preacher man.
It's not my way, Frank Clements, but the way of the Lord what counts here. You've been tried fair and square, and sentenced to hang for the wrongful killing of Jake Farley and his 2 sons. And hang you will.
Hang up!
Get him up
That is sudden. What the hell you think you're doing?
Don't try to stop us now, Ed. There's the Lord's work to be done here, and we aim to do it before his boys have the chance to bust him loose.
Know how you feel. We all knew Jake and his family. They're good folks, they were. But the law's the law. And the law says I hang Frank Clemens in the morning at sunrise.
The laws of men do not exceed the law of God. Clements is a minion of Lucifer. And if we see to his hanging for crimes against man and God, neither can find fault with us for it.
Sorry, Sheriff. I tried, but there's too many of them.
That part of the Lord's work, Thaddeus?
I'm right sorry for that, Slim. But the rain falls on the just and the unjust alike.
Come on, Sheriff. Let them hang me and get it over with. I ain't afraid of dying, and I can't stand no more of this preaching. That book gives him the right to do anything he wants to, in the name of the Lord.
You see how it is with his kind? No respect for the laws of men or the word of God. This is the tool-a-sing, the very one that Clements used to blow the head clean off Jake Farley. I swear in the name of God and on Jake's grave, it'll never again be used for evil in the hands of Frank Clements or any other man. It shall serve as a reminder to future generations of the wicked soul we dispatched to hell this very night.
No offense to the Lord, preacher, but I wouldn't be much of a lawman if I let this continue. Now, you just bring Frank Clemens down off there, and we'll have a good and proper hanging in the morning. Now, I want all of y'all to go home.
Clemens gang!
Perdition, Frank Clements. May your soul never rest.
As you sow, preacher, so shall ye reap.
Steve, how did this get on your radar? I know Verdugo's looking for films like this to kind of restore and put together and put out there, but how did you come across it, and what was it about this film for you that really resonated, that you said, I've got to make sure people see this?
Well, Tom brought it to our attention. I remembered it from the late 80s straight to video era. That's when I decided to get in the business myself as a writer or director. And so I would watch everything that I got my hands on. And so I knew of it, but we were working with Tom on another one of his films called Action USA. And he says, hey, I've got this other horror film, and it's a Western and it's a horror film. And would you guys like to check it out? And I think the thing that really amazed me about this film is it's got a good as you want it. It's got a good body count. It's got an intriguing story. It's got the period aspect of it. It's got the unique aspect of these iconic Western cowboys in Texas coming back to life, and it's got a regional authenticity to it because this was shot in the summer in Texas, and it's hot, and we're outdoors, and everybody's sweating, and everybody's trying to get through this. And so there's a certain amount of gritty realism there that you don't get in, say, a Charlie Band film shot on a Paramount soundstage. Nothing against those, but that's an appeal to me. The other thing that I think is critical, and a lot of these low-budget films, particularly of this era, the camera work and the blocking is very simple. Everything's on a tripod. You're doing basic blocking, master shots, cut-ins, or partial masters and cut-ins, and just as little coverage as possible because you don't have time. These guys didn't have time, but in spite of that, there is some amazing blocking and amazing camera work. Moving camera almost constantly, almost as if these guys had things like jib arms and stuff like that, which they really didn't have in those days. But I'm just astounded at the amount of camera movement, the versatile blocking. It's really a visually kinetic movie, which is unusual for this genre and this budget at that time.
And speaking of jib arms, we actually did have one. My brother-in-law and I, John Perdicki and I, built the little jib.
Well, you built one. Yeah, you built one.
Yeah, it didn't exist.
You couldn't rent it. You had to build it.
We had to build it. And it was very short, but we got, we could do booms and stuff with it. So it was really nice, and with some other moves. And you'll see some of the moves in there. I mean, they're very short because it was such a short jib arm, but we were able actually to do some of that stuff, which was very cool.
There's a great scene where it's a woods chase where the heroes are going through the woods in the middle of the day, and there's all this tight, tense close-ups as everybody's moving laterally, right to left. We've got all this great foreground going in behind trees and things like that, and that's another thing I loved about it. I love all horror films take place at night, and this has some great horror night scenes, but I love the incongruity of this bright, sunny, muggy daytime and all this horrible crap happening in the middle of it.
Come on, Pam, you fly inside.
Where are we going?
Back to the creek.
What?
Come on. Dad, we gotta move. Fast, come on, get up here. We're gonna have to swim.
Why?
The water might help us throw them off our trail, okay? Now, come on. I don't know. Fisherman, maybe. He's been shot.
By those cowboys?
That'd be my guess.
What's he after?
I don't know. Come on, let's just get going. Okay, Ben, just hang in there.
As an artist myself and somebody who wrote something that I'm actually restoring myself quite, a few years later, this is much later. And as you mentioned, Tom, you wish you had the equipment you had now back then. But looking back on this experience and revisiting it, for me, what I'm finding in my own struggles is that I'm a much better artist than I was back then, right? And in delving into my stories, I'm starting to rework them to the artist I am now. So restoring this, and how careful were you about keeping the integrity of what you did originally, and how hard was it for you to kind of go back and not kind of, I mean, obviously you didn't have a whole lot to play with, so that you can't like reshoot anything or do anything like that, but I'm kind of curious.
We kept it pretty much the same. The only thing we did, we added a little bit of when we saw the cowboys, I think we blew it out a little bit or something, because that was the original intent, but we couldn't do it at the time. We couldn't afford the opticals and all that, so we never did it originally. But that's pretty much the only thing we did. Isn't that right, Steve? Or did we?
Yeah, Tom pretty much personally supervised this entire restoration, remastering, and yeah, there was a great sort of a glowing effect, slight, subtle, but there added to the Ghostriders themselves, which, as Tom said, they'd wanted to do, but it was too expensive to do optically back in those days. And of course, we can do it pretty easily, on the video side of things once you're in HD these days. And that was the main thing. I mean, the great thing about working with Tom is he knows exactly what he wants, and he knows exactly how it looked at its best back in the day and what it needs to look like now. And that's kind of the approach we take. We're not trying to make it a film that was made in 2022. We're trying to make the best version that we possibly can of what it's supposed to be. We're taking the rust off. That's what we're doing. And of course, we all learn. You look at all of this stuff on VHS, and it really kind of uncovers what it's supposed to look like when you get to do it in this world, as opposed to those old VHS standard def transfers.
Bring it on, you bastards!
Sure, but it would be tempting to go back and make some changes, but I think it would have been more interesting if it was black and white. But that's a different movie, I guess.
Oh, interesting.
We did add some music to the opening sequence, and that was cool to do because we were working with a guy in house who actually did compose some music for Charlie Band films back in the 2000s, nice. And
because
we basically.
I remember there being some music on that title sequence, and for some reason it's not there. But I know that Frank Patterson, who did the music, had done something with like a pipe organ, kind of thing, and old pedal type organ. But I don't know whatever happened to it.
Well, we used a guy in the house named Randy Durchin, and we told him specifically, this needs to sound not only like the original composer, because we want to stay true to the intent of the film, but it needs to sound like the period too. This needs to sound like 80s music, because we want it consistent. So.
would you think? I don't know if you had a relationship with Alan past this, Tom, but what would you think Alan would have thought of putting this out there now? Do you think he would have been really excited about this?
Oh, Alan and I have been friends since I was 12. He was a little bit older, and stayed friends our whole life. And I really regret the fact that he's not here to see this, because he would have loved it. You know, it was his first film. He had everything in it, and he would have just loved the fact that this is coming out, you know. And I know his family's going to really like it.
At the end of the day, and correct me if I'm wrong, Tom, but I think the fans that want this stuff, they want it to look like what they remember. They want to have that experience. They don't want it to be, you know, prettied up. They want it to look like...
I think that's true. And when I look back at some of those old films, you know, that's what I like about them. You know, obviously they would not hold up, you know, if you turned over something like that new, but it's great just to see how it all plays out in the, you know, with the technology we had in the 80s.
To speak a little bit to that, Tom, I you know, what unique challenges did you face in this production that filmmakers today wouldn't understand?
Well, mostly is the night exteriors, you know, because the film was so slow back in those days. Plus 16 millimeters was less forgiving. And we just didn't have the power or the lights to do much in the way of night exteriors. And like what Steve was saying, you know, there's a lot of day horror stuff that some of that was out of necessity. You know, we couldn't light up that little field with all the trees and stuff, you know, the forest out there. We just didn't have the power or the lights. So we had to do with what we could, or with what we had. And I think it worked pretty well, though. It gave it a different look.
You know, did you do a lot of ADR on this? It looked, because it's all out. Most of it's outside. I'm kind of curious how that happened.
I don't remember doing a lot of ADR. Alan handled most of the post sound, and it was done in. I think the only person that did ADR was Bill Shaw, the older guy. Because we did some voiceover, a couple different things, or I can't remember exactly, but I think for some reason we had to do his ADR on some of it.
Steve, what do you want people to know about these films that your company is putting out there that you think is important for people to understand about this period? Is there something about these films that... Is it just a love for these films that you want to represent, or is there something you're trying to say by putting these films out there?
Well, I think this is part of an era where if you had some talent, a lot of talent, and you could put a film together, you could pretty much make virtually anything as long as it was in a recognizable genre, and you could do well with it. And it was because of the video boom, obviously, although some of these films played theatrically initially, but there was a great period of creativity from mid 80s into the early 90s where a lot of tremendous films were made, many of them on very low budgets, that were incredibly entertaining, that made kids, young adults, go to a Blockbuster and walk home with, you know, 6 or 7 movies for the weekend. It was basically the drive-in movie in your living room, and it kind of became that experience. Those of us that grew up in the drive-in era, myself included, we have that experience, and we love those movies, and we love them to look the way that they did when we originally saw them. And this next generation loves what was done at that time. I mean, these films were just pure entertainment, and that's what they were designed for, and they delivered. And at the end of the day, that's what you want. You know, I was entertained. I had a ball for 90 minutes.
It's nice to see all the in-camera effects. You know, I don't think there's a single, other than I think the title sequence, I don't think there's any real opticals in it.
These guys, Tom and the guys he was working with, they basically created this amazing industry there in Texas. And the Action USA that they also did is one of the most astounding action films you will ever see. And these guys, it's all, and Ghostriders is the same way. It's all organic. There's no CGI. Couldn't afford CGI. There was and they didn't even have it back then. It's purely organic, in-camera effects, in-camera cutting, actors acting in real environments, and it's Tom and I are both fans of this stuff too. So I mean, it's like that's the thing. That's what keeps you going in this business, is you figure out a way to keep that 12-year-old kid in your head alive. And so, you know, I see a movie like, if we weren't putting this out and I saw this, Ghostriders, 1987, I'm in. Where can I buy this? You know, where can I get this? So it's so much fun for us too. And in terms of the work we're doing, in this case, we were working for Tom. That was the great part of it, because we don't always have the opportunity to have the creative force behind the film actually saying, no, this is what it needs to be. This is what we need to do here. And that's the icing on the cake for us.
In an old man's tortured dreams lies a mystery unsolved.
As you sow, preacher, so shall you reap.
An evil unbridled.
Reminder to
violence unleashed.
The wicked soul we dispatched to hell this very night.
For him, an unexpected destiny.
With you, boy? You can't be. It's the gun. No!
A horror not imagined.
No!
As the souls of desperate men reach out for their revenge, the innocent will suffer. And a family will perish forever. They've come from hell to get what was theirs, and nothing is going to stop them.
You're all dead.